everyone, this is Heather. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I've got a card tutorial for you of this fun card with unicorns dancing around in the clouds, and I'm using some new product from the Stampin' Up Occasions catalog, and I'm using the Magical Day stamp set. If you haven't watched it already, please check out my channel. I've got a card tutorial using the adorable mermaid. Today we're using the unicorn. There's also a dragon and a wizard and a knight and some great accessories and some words. Then there's also a coordinating die set, Magical Mates Framelits dies, sorry. And today we're going to be using the unicorn die that coordinates with the stamp and also the banner die. Then I'm also using the watercolor pencils from Stampin' Up. And then I've got some strips of pretty ribbon. I've got some cloud pattern paper that coordinates with the stamps and the dies. This is from the Myths and Magic pattern paper. And I have cut this to 5 1/4 by 4. And then I've got a piece of Berry Burst cardstock that's cut to 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. And then I've also got some watercolor paper, and I'm just using Strathmore watercolor paper that I picked up at the craft store, and just cut the sheet down just a little bit. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I've gone ahead and folded my cardstock in half for my card base, and I'm just going to set that off to the side. And because I am stamping on watercolor paper, it has a little bit of a texture to it. I like to use the stamp positioner. This one is from Hampton Arts, and unfortunately it's not available any longer. It came out right before the Misty got their patent. So there are quite a few. There's several sizes of Misties. Tim Holtz also has one. Some other companies are coming out with some new platforms. You don't have to have a stamp platform, but I do find that with the texture of the watercolor paper, it can really help. And because this is a mounted stamp, I'm going to go ahead and take the foam out, place my watercolor paper in my stamp positioner, put my magnets down, and lay my unicorn down, pick it up. And now we're going to ink that up, and I'm using Stays On ink because I am using watercolor. So anytime you want to use a water-based product like water-based markers or colored pencils, watercolors, Stays On is really good for that. So I'm going to stamp that out on my watercolor paper, and so with the stamp positioner, if I need to do it again, I can. That looks pretty good. And I'm taking a stamp chamois from Lawn Fawn, which this is something that I just recently got. I know it's been out for a while, but I hadn't picked one up yet. I absolutely love it when you're using a stamp positioner. It's really convenient to clean off the stamp. And now we can position it again. So we want to stamp the unicorn 3 times on the watercolor paper. Doesn't need to be straight or in any particular position because we're going to die cut it out. So I'm going to ink it up again with the Stays On and stamp it out one more time, and then a 3rd time. Clean that off real quick. Position that and pick it up. Oh, got a little bit of ink on there, but that's okay because that's exactly where it's gonna land again. That's the great thing about the positioner. And all of these images have looked pretty good. I haven't needed to double stamp anything. Nope, see, that one didn't come out very well, so I'm glad I've got my positioner. We're going to ink that up one more time. Press that down. And now we've got 3 great looking unicorns. So clean the unicorn stamp off and set it off to the side for now. Let's get those unicorns out. And we will come back to the stamp positioner in a minute for our words. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and color up the unicorns. So I'm using the Stampin' Up! Watercolor pencils, and the colors I'm using today are Rich Razzleberry, Calypso Coral, Daffodil Delight, and Bermuda Bay. So I'll bring my card back over so you can see. So what I did was I've got 3 unicorns with 3 different kind of base colors and main colors. So I'm just going to switch up. So one will have the like a blue body and a blue mane, and a purple mane and a purple body. Same thing with the coral color. And so I'm going to try to do a little bit of shading with the watercolor pencils. So I like to lay down a heavier amount of color where I'd like it to be a little bit darker. Nice thing about watercolor pencils is you don't really need to be perfect with your coloring with the pencil itself. You're going to be kind of moving that color around with your water brush or paintbrush. So I've got just a little bit of color down there. I'm going to pick one of the other horses to do the tail and the mane in that same Calypso Coral color. And again, I'm not completely coloring everything in, just doing some of the sections, and you can just be quick and a little bit, not messy with it, but it doesn't need to be perfect because that's sort of the look of watercolor. So I like to use a water brush, but you could use just a paintbrush and a cup of water and a paper towel. And yes, I do have Star Wars paper towels. So I like to squeeze out just a little bit of water to make sure that the tip of my brush is damp. You can also squeeze while you're working, but you don't want to get too much water on your project. So you just want to start moving some of that color around, kind of smoothing out those lines. Make sure you get everything colored in. So, you know, watercolor is very loose and free-flowing. It does not need to be perfect. If you go outside the lines, that's okay. So if you don't have enough color, you can actually go back in if you want it a little bit darker and add a little bit more. If you want a little bit more shading, you can just layer that back up. If you need to get a little bit more water on your brush, just squeeze it out on your paper towel and just move that color around until you're happy with it. And you can keep adding more and more color to it. I'm gonna go over and get my tail and mane on this other unicorn. Done. And I did all of the horns in the Daffodil Delight. Go ahead and color all 3 of those horns in. Okay, and now let me grab the Rich Razzleberry, and now I'm going to do the body of another one of the unicorns the exact same way. Just lay down some color. I love this purple on this. So again, just kind of adding a little bit extra color where I want a little bit darker for some shading. Let me give this one a mane and tail in this color. And grab my brush and just start moving some of that color around. Like so, if you want to add some more in, you can. Most times you don't even need to wait for it to dry. If your watercolor paper starts to pill up a little bit, you may want to wait for your color to dry just a little bit before adding too many layers on top of it. Just gonna try and get a little bit of shading in there. Like that. So I'm just gonna keep working and I'm gonna get these colored in and I'll be right back. Okay, so I am done coloring out my unicorns with the watercolor pencils, and now I want to stamp out the words on some of the space that I have left here on my watercolor paper. And we're actually going to stamp the words twice, once on the clouds and once on the watercolor paper. So we're going to ink this up. And we really just need the magical part. But if you ink up more than that, that's fine. And again, using the stamp positioner just in case, because this is solid. If I don't get a really good impression, see, because of the texture, we can ink that up again. See if we can't get that to look a little more solid. And let's do it one more time. Get a nice bold image. There we go. That looks great. So I'm going to clean this off so I can move it around for the clouds. And your StazOn will stain your stamps just a little bit, but that's okay. So I'm going to move the watercolor paper out of the way and bring the clouds in and place this on the top center of my cloud pattern paper. Let's get that magnets on there. Get that up where we want it. Close the lid. Ink that up. And close the lid and get that stamped onto the cloud paper. And all we're using from this section of the words is the "Hope Your Day Is." So as long as that looks good, then we're good to go. And clean the stamp off again and get the positioner out of the way. We are done with that. And now we're going to do some die cutting. And so for the banner, all I want to cut out is just the word magical. So I'm going to take some repositionable tape. You could use washi tape, any type of a low tack tape that you've got. And make sure that that is centered inside of the banner. And tape that in place in a couple of places just so that it doesn't move around. And then we're going to also die cut each of the unicorns, and same thing, we're going to take a little repositionable tape and make sure that that's centered on there on our little unicorn. And again, tape it in place a couple of places so it doesn't slip around. Bring my die cut machine over. And place this into my plate. Bring my Sizzix over and run that through. All right. And we'll have a banner and a unicorn. And as you can see, I had accidentally stamped on the wrong side of the watercolor paper, so I flipped it over, which is nice. You can use both sides. And so now I've got just the magical words inside the banner and one of the unicorns cut. And now I'm just going to cut out the other two unicorns the exact same way. I'll be right back. Okay, so I have die cut out my 3 unicorns and the magical words, and now I want to add a little bit of gradiated color to the banner. So I'm just going over with the rich razzleberry, starting from the top and working my way down and adding a lot more color just with heavier pressure at the top of the banner. I'm gonna get my water brush and just kind of blend that out. So I have a bit of a gradiated look to my banner. Hope you can see that with the watercolor. And now I'm going to take a couple of pieces of ribbon, just as long as it's long enough to, this is about 6 inches, to wrap around your pattern paper. So lay it right over top of the magical words, and I'm just taking just regular Scotch tape. You can use whatever adhesive you have on hand, and I'm just taping it down in the back right over top of those words. Now I'm going to take some foam dots and place that on the back of the banner that we die cut, and lay that over top of the ribbon like so. I'm going to take a slightly smaller piece of the same ribbon and I'll slip that under the one that's adhered and tie it in a knot. If you want, you could tie it in a bow. Just do a little overhand knot there, and I'm just going to take my scissors and just cut it off at a little bit of an angle. Like that. And now I'm going to also put some foam squares on the back of the unicorns as well. And we're going to tape the pattern paper to the back, on the back. We're going to add some adhesive on the back, say that right, and adhere that to our card front. Center that down like so. And now we're going to put our unicorns on and just kind of have them just sort of jumping around, sort of space them out a little bit with that foam tape so they're popped up. Get the little blue one on here. Okay, and that is our magical unicorn card using some of the new Occasions products from Stampin' Up. I really appreciate you joining me today. Please check out my channel. Like I mentioned, I have a card made with a mermaid from this same set, along with some other tutorials and product reviews and everything. I really appreciate you joining me today. Thank you so much. Have a magical day. This is Heather. Bye.